Harold Newland's hands trembled as he knelt before the orc woman, and not from the cold wind that swept across the mountain pass. He had traveled 3 weeks through hostile territory to reach her village, driven by a desperation that made even the threat of death seem trivial. His younger sister lay dying in their valley below, poisoned by a serpent bite no human healer could cure, and the stories whispered in taverns spoke of only one remedy: the mountain orc's silver root, which grew nowhere else in all the known lands. The orc woman stood before him like a statue carved from jade and iron. She was perhaps 30 winters old, her green skin bearing the lighter patches of old scars along her powerful forearms. Her tusks curved upward from her lower jaw, small but sharp, catching the afternoon light. Dark hair, braided with leather cords, fell past her shoulders. Her eyes were the color of amber, and they studied him with an intensity that made him feel transparent. "You come to my village asking for silver root," she said, her voice deeper than any human woman's, each word pronounced with careful precision. "You know the stories, human. You know what happens to your kind here." Harold forced himself to meet her gaze. "I know. But my sister will die without it. I had to try." The orc woman circled him slowly, her leather and fur garments rustling with each measured step. Behind her, other orcs watched from the wooden lodges that lined the mountain settlement. Harold could feel their hostility like heat from a fire. Several gripped weapons. A few snarled. "My name is Grishka," the orc woman said, stopping before him again. "I am the medicine keeper of this clan. The silver root is mine to give or withhold." She crossed her arms, her muscled shoulders flexing beneath her vest. "You humans have killed our people, burned our settlements in the lowlands, called us monsters and worse. Why should I help you?" Harold's throat tightened. "I cannot speak for all humans. I can only speak for myself. I have never raised a blade against your people. I am a farmer, nothing more. But my sister is 15 years old and she has her whole life ahead of her. She did nothing to deserve this fate." His voice cracked. "Please, I will pay any price you name." Grishka's expression remained unreadable. She glanced at the other orcs, then back to him. "Any price?" "Yes, very well." Grishka gestured toward the center of the village where a large fire pit smoldered. "I will give you 3 tasks. Complete them and you will have enough silver root to save your sister. Fail even one and you leave empty-handed. Do you accept?" Hope surged through Harold's chest. "I accept." "What are the tasks?" Grishka's lips curved slightly, though whether in amusement or something else Harold could not tell. "The first task: our well has run dry. Find water and bring it back to the village before sunset tomorrow, not a cupful enough to fill our storage barrels. The second task: hunt and kill a cliff bear without weapons, bringing back its pelt intact. The third task: climb to the sacred peak and bring back a stone from the ancestors' shrine. You have 5 days for all 3. The gathered orcs murmured among themselves. One, a massive male with a scarred face, laughed outright. "Impossible tasks," he called out. "You send him to his death, Grishka." He said any price, Grishka replied without taking her eyes off Harold. "These are my terms." Harold's mind raced. Find water in a drought-stricken mountain in 1 day. Kill a cliff bear creatures known to stand 10 feet tall without weapons. Climb to a peak he could not even see through the clouds. Each task alone seemed designed to kill him. But Alina's face appeared in his mind, her fevered skin and labored breathing, and he nodded. "I accept your tasks," he said. Grishka studied him a moment longer, then nodded. "You may sleep in the guest lodge tonight. You begin at dawn." The guest lodge was little more than a shed attached to the village's edge, but it had a roof and walls that blocked the wind. Harold lay on the rough blankets provided, staring at the wooden ceiling. His body ached from the journey, but sleep would not come. He thought of Alina, of their small farm in the valley, of the life they had built after their parents died. She had been only 8 then, and he 18. He had raised her, taught her to read, to plant, to laugh despite everything. He could not lose her now. As the moon rose, the door creaked open. Grishka entered, carrying a bowl of stew and a water skin. She set them beside him without a word. "Thank you," Harold said, sitting up. She remained standing, her head nearly touching the low ceiling. "Why did you really come here, human? Surely you have healers in your valley." "None who could help. The serpent that bit her was a silver spine. The venom spreads slowly, but nothing stops it. Only silver root can draw it out." He picked up the bowl, grateful for the warmth. "I spent 2 weeks searching for any other cure." "There is none. So you came to the monsters in the mountains." "I came to the only people who might save her." Harold met her eyes. "I do not think you are monsters." Grishka's expression flickered with something he could not name. "You will when the cliff bear tears you apart. Perhaps. But I have to try." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The well is not truly dry. It collapsed in an earthquake 2 months ago. The water still flows beneath the rubble, but we cannot reach it. The cave system is too narrow for orcs to navigate." Harold set down the bowl. "Why tell me this?" "Because impossible is different than suicidal. If you have any cleverness in you, human, you will need it tomorrow." She stepped out into the night, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Dawn came cold and gray. Harold found Grishka waiting by the collapsed well, which sat at the village's eastern edge. True to her word, the stone-lined shaft had caved in completely, filled with boulders and debris. He could hear water trickling somewhere far below. "The storage barrels are there," Grishka said, pointing to 3 large wooden containers. "Fill them by sunset." Harold studied the collapse. The orcs watched from a distance, most looking either amused or disdainful. He approached the well carefully, testing the stones. Many were too large for him to move alone, but between them he could see gaps, spaces where the earth had settled. The sound of water grew louder near the southern edge. He began to work. The stones were heavy, each one requiring all his strength to shift even slightly. His hands scraped raw within the first hour. But Harold had spent his life working the land, and his body knew labor. He wedged smaller stones beneath larger ones, creating leverage. He dug with his hands when the gaps were too small, clearing dirt and gravel. By midday, sweat soaked through his shirt despite the mountain cold. Grishka appeared with food and water. "You should rest." "Cannot. Not enough time." Harold did not look up from his work. He had cleared a hole perhaps 2 feet wide, and the sound of water was much closer now. "You will kill yourself from exhaustion before you reach it." "Maybe," he grunted as another stone shifted, "but I will die trying." She said nothing for a long moment, then she set down the food and walked away. The afternoon wore on. Harold's muscles screamed, his fingers bled. But the hole grew deeper, wider. He could feel cool air rising from below now, carrying the scent of clean water. Other orcs came to watch, their expressions shifting from mockery to something resembling curiosity. One young orc, barely more than a boy, asked his mother why the human did not give up. Harold did not hear the answer. As the sun touched the western peaks, Harold's hand broke through into open space. Water splashed against his torn fingers. He nearly wept with relief, but relief lasted only seconds. The hole was still too small, and he had no way to draw water up. He looked around desperately and spotted a length of leather rope near one of the lodges. Racing over, he grabbed it, along with a metal cook pot someone had left outside. "Take it," a female orc said. She had been watching him work. "You have earned that much." Harold tied the pot to the rope and lowered it through the gap he had created. The sound of it filling was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. He pulled it up, water sloshing, and poured it into the first barrel. Then he lowered it again and again and again. His arms turned to lead. The rope burned against his palms, but he did not stop. The sun sank lower, painting the peaks orange and red. The first barrel filled, the second. The shadows grew long. Orcs gathered closer, watching in silence. Even the hostile ones had stopped sneering. Grishka stood beside the third barrel, her arms crossed. The sun sets soon. I know. Harold hauled up another pot of water. His vision swam. Pour, lower, lift, pour. His hands no longer felt attached to his body. Lower, lift, pour. The third barrel was 3/4 full when the sun's edge touched the horizon. Harold's legs buckled. He caught himself against the well, breathing in ragged gasps. The barrel seemed to mock him, that final quarter so close yet impossibly far. He could not lift his arms another time. He simply could not. "You have failed the first task," Grishka said, but her voice was not triumphant. It was quiet, almost gentle. Harold stared at the barrel, then at his ruined hands. "I am sorry," he whispered, though he did not know if he spoke to Grishka, to Alina, or to himself. "The second task begins tomorrow," Grishka said. "Rest tonight." "But I failed." Harold looked at her, confused through his exhaustion. "You said if I failed even one, I said the second task begins tomorrow." Grishka's amber eyes held something new, something that might have been respect. "Sleep, human." That night, Harold collapsed in the guest lodge without eating. His dreams were fevered, filled with images of Alina calling his name. When he woke before dawn, he found his hands had been bandaged while he slept. Salve had been applied to his cuts, something that smelled of pine and herbs. The pain had lessened to a dull throb. Grishka was waiting outside. "The cliff bear lives in the caves 2 hours north. You know the task." "No weapons," Harold said, standing despite his body's protests. "No weapons." The morning was cold enough that his breath misted. Grishka led him to the village's edge, then pointed toward a rocky ridge. "Through that pass, then follow the goat trail north. The caves are marked with claw marks." Harold started walking, but her voice stopped him. "Human." He turned. "Cliff bears are territorial but not mindlessly aggressive. They do not hunt for sport." She paused. "Remember that." It was the closest thing to advice she had given, and Harold nodded his gratitude before continuing on. The journey took longer than 2 hours because his exhausted body could manage only a slow pace. The mountain air was thin and sharp, making each breath a conscious effort. By the time he reached the caves, the sun had climbed to mid-morning. The claw marks were unmistakable deep gouges in the stone, each one as long as his forearm. Harold stood before the cave entrance, his heart hammering. He had no plan. No weapons. No chance, really, but he thought of Alina and stepped into the darkness. The cave smelled of animal musk and old blood. Harold's eyes adjusted slowly to the dim light filtering in from cracks in the ceiling. The passage opened into a larger chamber, and there, in a nest of bones and furs, lay the cliff bear. It was even larger than the story suggested. Its fur was thick and gray, its claws like daggers. The bear's eyes opened as Harold entered, reflecting the faint light with an eerie glow. It rose to its full height, easily 10 feet tall, and roared. The sound echoed through the cave like thunder. Harold's every instinct screamed at him to run, but he forced himself to stand still. Grishka's words echoed in his mind, not mindlessly aggressive. The bear dropped to all fours and moved toward him, each step shaking the ground. Harold's mouth went dry. He slowly raised his empty hands, showing them to the creature. "I do not want to hurt you," he said, his voice shaking. "I know you do not understand me, but I have to try. I need your help." The bear paused, its massive head tilting slightly. It sniffed the air, drawing in Harold's scent. Harold took one slow step forward. The bear growled, a sound that vibrated in his chest. He stopped. "My sister is dying," Harold continued, speaking as much to calm himself as anything. "I need to bring back your pelt to save her. I know that means killing you, and I cannot do that. I do not have the strength or the weapons, and even if I did, I do not think I could." Tears stung his eyes. "You are magnificent. You do not deserve to die for my need." The bear watched him with intelligent eyes. It took a step closer, and Harold could feel the heat radiating from its body. One swipe of those claws would end him. He closed his eyes, accepting it. Hot breath washed over his face. Harold waited for pain that did not come. When he opened his eyes, the bear had turned away. It moved to the back of the cave, and Harold heard scratching sounds. The bear returned, dragging something in its mouth, an old pelt, gray and weathered. It dropped the pelt at Harold's feet, then moved back to its nest. Harold stared at the pelt in disbelief. It was large enough, clearly from a cliff bear. Old, yes, but intact. The creature was giving him a pelt it had shed or found. "Thank you," Harold whispered, his voice breaking. "Thank you." The bear watched him leave, and Harold could have sworn it looked satisfied. The journey back to the village took the rest of the day. Harold's legs trembled with every step, and the pelt was heavy across his shoulders, but he did not stop. The sun was setting again when he stumbled into the village center and dropped the pelt before Grishka. "The cliff bear's pelt," he said. "Intact." Grishka lifted the pelt, examining it. Her expression was unreadable. The gathered orcs murmured among themselves. The scarred male from before stepped forward, sneering. "This is an old pelt, not a fresh kill. He did not hunt the bear." "I said bring back a cliff bear pelt intact," Grishka replied, still examining the fur. "I did not specify fresh. You meant for him to kill it." "I meant what I said." Grishka looked at Harold, and something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or recognition. "Tell me, human, how did you get this?" Harold met her eyes. "I asked the bear for help. It gave me an old pelt it no longer needed." Several orcs laughed, disbelieving, but Grishka did not laugh. She set the pelt down carefully. "You went into a cliff bear's den unarmed and asked for help." "Yes. And it gave you this rather than killing you." "Yes." Grishka was silent for a long moment. "You have failed the second task. The task was to hunt and kill the bear. You did neither." Harold's heart sank, but he nodded. He had known, really. Known that his approach was not what she intended. "The third task begins at dawn," Grishka continued. "Tonight, you eat with us." The meal was held in the communal lodge, a large building at the village center. Harold sat among the orcs, feeling their eyes upon him. The food was unfamiliar but hearty. Roasted mountain goat, root vegetables, thick bread. He ate mechanically, too tired to taste anything. Grishka sat across from him. "Why did you not try to fight the bear? I would have died. Quickly." Harold took a drink of the bitter ale they had given him. "And even if by some miracle I had won, killing such a creature for my own need seemed wrong. Many humans would have tried anyway. Many humans are fools." The words came out before Harold could stop them, and several orcs laughed. Even Grishka's lips twitched. "You are unlike other humans I have met," she said. "You have met many." Her expression darkened. "Enough. Most came with swords and torches." She gestured to the scars on her arms. "These are from a raid 5 years ago. They burned our lower village and killed 17 of our people, including children. They called it justice for raids we never committed." Harold set down his cup. "I am sorry. That is inexcusable. Sorry does not bring back the dead." "No, it does not." Harold looked at his bandaged hands. "But not all humans are like those who attacked you, just as I hope not all orcs are like the worst examples of your kind." Grishka studied him for a long moment. "Get some rest. The sacred peak is a full day's climb, and the path is treacherous." That night, Harold dreamed of Alina again, but this time she was smiling, healthy and whole. He woke with tears on his face and the knowledge that time was running out. He had perhaps 3 days before the venom would overwhelm her system completely. Grishka was waiting at dawn with supplies: rope, food, water. The sacred peak is that one. She pointed to a jagged summit that rose above all others, its top hidden in clouds. The ancestors' shrine is at the summit. Bring back a stone from it. Just any stone from the shrine. She handed him the rope. The path is marked with red stones. Do not stray from it or you will fall. Harold took the supplies and began to climb. The path was indeed marked, but calling it a path was generous. It was more a series of ledges and cracks in the mountain face, each one requiring careful navigation. The rope helped, allowing Harold to secure himself when the way became too narrow or too steep. But his body was already exhausted from 2 days of impossible tasks, and every step was agony. By midday, he had climbed perhaps a third of the way. His hands screamed in pain despite the bandages. His legs shook. The air grew colder and thinner, making his head pound. He rested on a narrow ledge, eating some of the food Grishka had provided: dried meat and hard cheese, and staring at the distance still remaining. He thought about giving up, about climbing down and begging Grishka for the silver root based on what he had already endured. But he knew what her answer would be. She had set clear terms, so he kept climbing. The afternoon brought wind that howled through the peaks like a living thing. It tore at Harold's clothing and threatened to pull him from the mountain. He pressed himself against the stone, moving inch by inch. His fingers were numb. He could no longer feel his feet. By evening, he reached the cloud layer. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The red marker stones became harder to see, and Harold had to feel for them with his hands. The cold was intense, burning his lungs with each breath. Night fell, and Harold knew he could not continue in darkness. He found a shallow alcove in the rock face and wedged himself into it, wrapping his cloak tight. He could not light a fire. There was no wood, no shelter from the wind. He could only endure. The night was the longest of his life. The cold seeped into his bones. Several times he nearly fell asleep, only to jerk awake, knowing that sleep in these conditions meant death. He thought of Alina to keep himself conscious. Remembered teaching her to write her name, to bake bread, to whistle. Remembered her laugh. Her stubborn determination when she wanted to learn something new. Her kindness to every stray animal that wandered onto their farm. Dawn came gray and dim. Harold's body had stiffened during the night, and it took several minutes before he could move his limbs enough to continue. But he climbed. The summit was so close now. Through breaks in the cloud, he could see the top, perhaps an hour away. His hands were bleeding again through the bandages. His legs trembled with every movement. But he climbed. The ancestors' shrine appeared through the mist like a vision. It was a simple structure, a circle of standing stones surrounding a central altar, all of it covered in a layer of ice and snow. Harold pulled himself over the final edge and collapsed onto the frozen ground, gasping. For several minutes, he simply lay there, unable to move. Then slowly he crawled toward the shrine. The stones were carved with symbols he did not recognize, weathered by centuries of wind and ice. The altar held offerings: bones, feathers, small carved figures. Harold reached for a stone at the altar's base, small enough to carry but clearly part of the shrine. His fingers closed around it, and for a moment he felt something, a warmth perhaps, or a sense of presence, as if the ancestors were watching. "Please," he whispered, "let this be enough." The descent was, in some ways, harder than the climb. His body wanted to rush, to hurry down, but that would mean death. He forced himself to move carefully, testing each handhold, each foothold. The clouds cleared as he descended, revealing the village far below. By the time he reached the bottom, night had fallen again. He had been climbing for a day and a half without real rest. His vision blurred as he stumbled into the village. Orcs gathered around him, their faces shifting in the firelight. Grishka stood before him, her expression grave. "You have the stone." Harold fumbled in his pouch and pulled out the stone, holding it up. It gleamed in the firelight, ice still clinging to its surface. Grishka took it carefully, examining it. She turned it over in her large hands, and Harold saw her eyes widen slightly. "This is from the primary altar, the most sacred spot." "Was that wrong?" Harold's words slurred with exhaustion. "You said any stone, it was not wrong." Grishka looked at him with an expression he could not read. "But such stones are meant only for the most important prayers. Taking one is." She trailed off, then shook her head. "You should not have been able to reach it. The ice should have been too thick." Harold swayed on his feet. "But I did reach it. I completed the task." "No," Grishka's voice was firm. "The task was to bring back a stone from the ancestors' shrine." "This is not from the shrine, it is from the altar itself. They are different." The world tilted. I do not understand. It was the only stone I could reach." "Then you have failed the third task." Grishka's words fell like hammer blows. "You have failed all 3 tasks, Harold Newland." Harold's legs gave out. He fell to his knees in the dirt, the weight of defeat crushing him. Alina's face filled his mind, and he could not stop the sob that tore from his throat. "Please," he gasped. "Please, I tried so hard. She is dying." Tears ran down his face, freezing in the mountain air. He did not care that the orcs watched. Did not care about anything except the fact that he had failed, that Alina would die because he was not strong enough, not clever enough, not enough. Grishka knelt before him, and Harold felt her hand on his shoulder. It was warm and strong, and when he looked up, her amber eyes were soft. "You failed all 3 tasks," she said quietly. "You did not fill the barrels completely. You did not hunt and kill the cliff bear. You took the wrong stone from the shrine." She paused, and her hand tightened on his shoulder. "But I am going to give you the silver root anyway." Harold stared at her, unable to process the words. "You want to know why?" Grishka continued, her voice growing stronger. "Because in 2 days, you did what no orc could do. You reached water we could not access because you were small enough to fit through the gaps. You brought back a cliff bear pelt without violence because you had the wisdom to ask rather than attack. You reached the sacred altar and took a stone the ancestors deemed you worthy to carry." She pulled him to his feet, supporting his weight. "The tasks were impossible, yes, but you faced them anyway. You bled for them. You nearly died for them. And when you failed, you wept not for yourself but for your sister." She turned to address the gathered orcs, her voice ringing out. "I set impossible tasks because I wanted to see what kind of human would come begging to orcs for help. I wanted to see if he would give up, if he would make excuses, if he would blame us for his failure." Her eyes swept across the crowd. "He did none of those things. He worked until his hands bled and his body broke. He showed mercy to a creature that could have killed him. He climbed higher than any human should be able to climb in conditions that would kill most of us." The scarred male stepped forward. "But he failed, Grishka. You said—" "I know what I said." Grishka's voice turned hard. "And I am the medicine keeper. The silver root is mine to give. I have made my decision." She helped Harold toward her lodge, supporting most of his weight. Inside, she settled him by the fire and then went to a locked chest in the corner. From it, she removed a cloth-wrapped bundle. When she unwrapped it, Harold saw roots that gleamed like actual silver, their surfaces almost metallic. "This is enough to cure your sister," Grishka said, dividing the roots and wrapping half in a clean cloth. "Boil them in water until the water turns silver. Have her drink 1 cup every hour until the fever breaks and the swelling fades. It will take a day, perhaps 2. Harold took the wrapped roots with shaking hands. Thank you, thank you. I do not know how. There is a condition, Grishka interrupted. You must return here after she is healed. You must tell me if the cure worked. Of course, I promise I will return. Good. Grishka pulled another bundle from a shelf, food and water for his journey. Rest for 2 hours, then leave. Travel through the night if you can. Your sister does not have much time. Harold wanted to leave immediately, but his body would not cooperate. He dozed by Grishka's fire while she tended to his wounds, applying fresh bandages and salve. When she woke him, she had a pack ready with everything he needed. Go, she said. Quickly. The journey down the mountain was a blur of pain and determination. Harold moved as fast as his exhausted body allowed, driven by desperate hope. He did not stop to sleep, only pausing briefly to eat and drink. The silver root was secure in his pack, precious beyond measure. He reached the valley after 2.5 days of near-constant travel. His farm appeared like a vision, and he stumbled through the door to find his neighbor, old Martha, sitting beside Alina's bed. His sister looked even worse than when he had left. Her skin had a grayish tinge. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. Harold, Martha stood quickly. Thank the stars. I did not think you would make it back in time. Harold was already at the fireplace, boiling water. His hands shook as he added the silver root, watching it turn the water a shimmering silver color. When it was ready, he brought a cup to Alina's bedside and lifted her head gently. Alina, he whispered, I need you to drink this. Can you hear me? Her eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. Harold, I am here. Drink this, please. She managed a few sips before falling back exhausted. But it was enough. Harold sat beside her bed, giving her small amounts every hour as Grishka had instructed. Martha stayed to help, bringing food and fresh water. By the next morning, Alina's fever had decreased slightly. The swelling around the bite was less angry. Harold felt hope kindle in his chest. He continued the treatment, not sleeping, watching her every moment. On the 2nd day, Alina opened her eyes and spoke clearly for the first time in weeks. Harold, what happened? Harold nearly collapsed with relief. You were bitten by a serpent, but you are going to be all right now. Over the next week, Alina recovered steadily. The grayish tinge left her skin. Her strength returned. She ate solid food and even walked around the house. Harold told her about his journey to the orc village, about Grishka and the 3 impossible tasks. You climbed the sacred peak, Alina asked, her eyes wide. Harold, that is insane. It was necessary. Harold looked out the window toward the mountains. And I made a promise. I told Grishka I would return to tell her if the cure worked. When will you go? Soon. Once I am certain you are fully recovered. Alina studied her brother carefully. You speak of her differently than you speak of others. Do I? You say her name like it means something. Harold did not have an answer for that, so he simply smiled and changed the subject. 2 weeks after returning home, Harold set out for the mountains again. Alina was fully healed, working around the farm with her old energy. He carried gifts, this time honey from their bees, smoked fish, a bolt of cloth his mother had woven years ago. The journey up the mountain felt different now. Familiar, almost. When he reached the village, several orcs recognized him. They did not threaten him this time, though they watched warily. One of them went to fetch Grishka. She emerged from her lodge and stopped when she saw him. For a moment neither spoke. Then Harold held up the gifts. She is healed, he said. The cure worked perfectly. I came to thank you and to keep my promise. Grishka walked toward him slowly, her expression unreadable. You came back. I gave you my word. Many humans give their word, few keep it. She gestured toward her lodge. Come, tell me about your sister's recovery. Inside, Harold described Alina's healing process in detail while Grishka listened intently, asking questions about symptoms and timing. She seemed pleased that the treatment had gone exactly as expected. "You have my thanks," Harold said when he finished. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." "You saved her life." Grishka was quiet for a moment. "Why did you really come back, Harold Newland? You could have sent word with a traveler. You did not need to make this journey again." Harold met her eyes and the truth came out before he could stop it. "Because I wanted to see you again." The words hung in the air between them. Grishka's amber eyes widened slightly and something passed across her face, surprise, perhaps, or uncertainty. "That is foolish," she said quietly. "I know. I am an orc. You are human. Such things are not done. I know that too." "Then why say it?" Harold took a breath. "Because during those 3 days you showed me more honor and respect than many humans ever have. You tested me, yes, but fairly. You listened to me. You saw me." He looked at his hands, still healing from his labors. "And when I failed your tasks, you chose mercy over rules. You valued what I tried to do over what I succeeded in doing. That matters to me." Grishka stood abruptly and moved to the window, her back to him. "You do not understand what you are saying. If my people knew I had feelings for a human, they would cast me out, and your people would do worse to you. I understand the risks. Do you?" She turned, and her expression was anguished. 3 winters ago, an orc woman from a southern clan fell in love with a human man. They tried to run away together. Both clans hunted them down. They killed the man in front of her, then exiled her. She died alone in the wilderness. That is what waits for those who cross such lines. Harold stood as well, moving closer. "Then maybe we do not cross the line. Maybe I simply visit sometimes. Bring you honey and smoked fish. Tell you about my farm. Listen to your stories." "Why would you risk even that?" "Because isolation is another kind of death." Harold's voice was gentle. "And I think you are as alone as I am." Grishka's eyes glistened and she looked away. "You should go. All right." Harold moved toward the door but paused. "May I come back, just to visit?" She did not answer for a long moment. Then, barely audible, "Yes." Over the following months, Harold made the journey to the orc village many times. He came bearing gifts, food, cloth, tools, and Grishka slowly began to share parts of her life with him. She taught him about orc medicine, showing him the plants and roots her people used. She told him stories of her childhood, of learning the healing arts from her grandmother. In turn, Harold told her about farming, about the rhythms of planting and harvest. He described his parents, taken by sickness when he was young. He talked about raising Alina, the joys and fears of it. The other orcs gradually accepted his presence, though some remained hostile. The scarred male, whose name was Groth, watched Harold with open suspicion. But others, especially the younger ones, grew curious. They asked him questions about human villages, about crops and animals. Grishka and Harold never touched beyond the occasional brush of hands. They never spoke explicitly of what was growing between them. But it was there, undeniable, in the way she smiled when he arrived, in the way he found excuses to stay longer each visit. Spring turned to summer. Alina noticed the change in her brother, the way he seemed lighter somehow, happier. "You are falling in love with her," she said one evening. Harold did not deny it. "Is that so terrible?" "No, but it is dangerous." Alina took his hand. "I owe her my life, Harold. I will support whatever you choose, but be careful." "I will." In the mountains, Grishka was having similar conversations. Her closest friend, an orc woman named Varka, confronted her. "Everyone sees it, Grishka, the way you look at the human." "Harold," Grishka corrected. "His name is Harold." "Harold, then. What are you going to do?" "Nothing. We are friends." "You are more than friends, and you know it." Varka's voice was concerned, not accusatory. "This will not end well. I know." Grishka's voice was pained. "But I cannot make myself stop caring for him. I have tried." Summer brought word of troubles in the lowlands. A group of humans had attacked an orc hunting party, killing 2. Tensions escalated. Orcs spoke of retaliation. Humans fortified their villages. The fragile peace that had existed was fracturing. Harold arrived at the mountain village to find it in an uproar. Groth was arguing loudly in the center square, surrounded by angry orcs. "We should strike back. Show them we are not to be trifled with, and start a war." Grishka's voice cut through the noise. "More deaths on both sides. They killed our people. And if we kill theirs, where does it end?" Grishka gestured around. "War will destroy us all." Groth spotted Harold entering the village. "Speaking of humans, what is he doing here?" The crowd turned, and Harold felt their hostility like a physical force. Several orcs reached for weapons. "He is my guest," Grishka said firmly, moving to stand beside Harold. "Your guest," Groth sneered. "Or something more." "Everyone has seen how you look at him, Grishka, how he comes here bearing gifts. Are you a traitor to your people now?" "I am loyal to peace, to life." Grishka's voice was hard. "Harold is a farmer, not a warrior. He has never raised a hand against our people. He is human. That is enough." The crowd murmured agreement. Harold felt his pulse quicken but forced himself to remain calm. "I heard about the attack. I am deeply sorry for your loss. Those men do not speak for all humans." "Pretty words," Groth spat, "but words will not bring back the dead. No, they will not." Harold took a breath. "But more violence will only create more dead, on both sides. I have lost family to violence. It solves nothing. You dare to lecture us. I dare to speak as someone who has lived through loss and found that vengeance never fills the emptiness it promises to fill." Harold met Groth's eyes steadily. "I understand your anger. I would feel the same. But Grishka is right. Where does it end?" Groth stepped forward threateningly, but Grishka moved between them. "Enough. Harold is under my protection. Any who wish to harm him must go through me first." The crowd fell silent. Grishka was respected, even feared for her skills and knowledge, but the tension remained thick. "This is not over," Groth said finally and stalked away. Several others followed him. Grishka turned to Harold, her expression strained. "You should not have come today. I came to warn you. There is talk in the valley of a militia forming, planning to attack orc settlements in retaliation for past raids." Harold kept his voice low. "Not everyone supports it, but enough do. I wanted you to know. So war is coming regardless. Maybe, maybe not. But your people should be prepared." That night, Harold stayed in the guest lodge, but sleep eluded him. Around midnight, his door opened and Grishka entered. She sat beside him in the darkness, close enough that he could feel her warmth. "I am afraid," she said quietly. It was the first time he had heard her admit fear. "Afraid of war, afraid of losing my people, afraid of losing you." Harold took her hand, her skin rough and warm against his. "I am afraid too. We should not do this, should not feel this way about each other. I know it will end badly." "Probably." She turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight through the window. "Then why does it feel right?" Harold had no answer except to bring her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. Grishka shuddered, then leaned her forehead against his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, neither speaking, simply taking comfort in each other's presence. "If war comes," Grishka finally said, "promise me you will stay safe. Keep your sister safe. I promise. And you must promise the same." "I will." She pulled back slightly, and in the moonlight, Harold saw tears tracking down her cheeks. "I love you, Harold Newland. I should not, but I do." Harold's heart swelled painfully. "I love you too, Grishka. Have loved you since the day you gave me the silver root despite my failures." She laughed, a broken sound. "You loved me for my mercy. I loved you for seeing who I was beneath the failures. for valuing the attempt as much as the result. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away her tears. You saw me when I was at my lowest and chose to lift me up instead of pushing me down. How could I not love you? Grishka kissed him then, and it was gentle and desperate all at once. Her tusks pressed lightly against his face, a sensation both strange and wonderful. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. What do we do? She whispered. I do not know, but we face it together. She stayed until dawn, lying beside him, their fingers intertwined. When the sun rose, she slipped away before anyone could see her leaving his lodge. The next weeks were tense. Word spread quickly that Grishka and Harold were involved, despite their attempts at discretion. In the orc village, opinions split. Some were disgusted, others merely uneasy, a few quietly supportive. In the human valley, Harold faced similar division. Several neighbors stopped speaking to him. Old Martha stood by him, as did Alina, but others muttered that he was a traitor. Then the militia came. They rode up the mountain trail at dawn, 20 men armed with swords and bows. Harold, visiting the orc village, woke to shouting and the sound of steel being drawn. He rushed outside to find the orcs preparing for battle. Stay inside, Grishka commanded, her own weapons in hand. No, let me try to talk to them. They will kill you. They might listen. Harold grabbed her arm. Please, let me try. Grishka hesitated, then nodded sharply. But if they attack, you run. Promise me. I promise. Harold walked to the village entrance, his hands raised and empty. The militia had stopped at the gate, their leader a grizzled man named Thomas Norrington, whom Harold recognized from the valley. Harold, Thomas looked shocked. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, Thomas. Why have you come armed to this village? These orcs killed our people. We have come for justice. Justice or vengeance? Harold kept his voice calm but firm. The orcs here did not attack anyone. They are peaceful. They keep to themselves. They have never raided our valley. They are orcs. That is enough. No, it is not. Harold moved closer, aware of both the militia's weapons and the orcs watching from behind him. I know there was an attack. I know people died. That is tragic and wrong, but these orcs had nothing to do with it. Attacking them will not bring back the dead, it will only create more death. They saved his sister's life. Another militiaman said. Harold recognized him as one of Alina's friend's fathers. My daughter told me the story. That does not change what they are, Thomas said, but his conviction wavered slightly. It changes everything, Harold countered. It proves that orcs and humans can coexist peacefully, that we can help each other, but not if we let fear and hate guide us. He gestured to the village behind him. These people have families, children. They have the same hopes and fears we do. They bleed the same blood. He is right. The voice came from behind Thomas, an older man Harold did not recognize. I am tired of war, tired of losing sons and brothers to endless fighting. If there is a chance for peace, we should take it. Peace with monsters, Thomas spat. Peace with people who happen to look different than us. Harold met Thomas's eyes steadily. You know me, Thomas. No, I am not a traitor or a fool. I have lived among these orcs for months now. They are not monsters. They are just people trying to survive, same as us. Thomas looked past Harold to where Grishka stood, her weapon still drawn but lowered. His eyes narrowed. You and the orc woman, the rumors are true then? Harold did not flinch. Yes, murmurs ran through both groups. Thomas shook his head slowly. You are a fool, Harold, but maybe a brave fool. He turned to his men. We leave, but this is not over. The next orc attack and we will not hesitate. Fair enough, Harold said, and I will speak to the orc chiefs, ask them to do the same. No more raids, no more attacks. Good luck with that, Thomas said, but he was already turning his horse. The militia rode away, leaving the mountain path empty. Harold turned to find every orc in the village staring at him. Groth stepped forward, his expression dark. "You had no right to promise them we would cease raids. You are not one of us." "You are right, I am not. But I will help arrange a meeting between your chiefs and the valley elders. Let both sides speak honestly about grievances and find a path forward." "And why would the humans listen to you?" Groth demanded. "Because I am one of them, and I am standing here with you. Because sometimes a bridge is more valuable than a sword." Harold looked around at the assembled orcs. "I know I am an outsider. I know my relationship with Grishka is unusual and makes many of you uncomfortable, but I want peace, for all of us." An older orc woman, gray-haired and bent with age, stepped forward. "You speak well, human, perhaps too well, but you stood between us and armed men. That takes courage." She looked at Grishka. "Your human has honor, granddaughter." Grishka's eyes widened. "Grandmother, silence. I am old, not blind. I have watched you these months, seen how you glow when he arrives, how you wither when he leaves." The old woman turned back to Harold. "You love her." "Yes, elder, with all my heart. And you understand what that means, the hardship it will bring?" "I do." The grandmother studied him a long moment, then nodded. "Then you have my blessing for what it is worth. Love is rare enough in this world. We should not destroy it when it appears, even in unexpected forms." Her words shifted something in the village. Not everyone agreed Groth, and his supporters made that clear, but the open hostility lessened. Grishka's position as medicine keeper and her grandmother's blessing provided protection that pure love alone could not. Over the following months, Harold worked tirelessly to establish peace. He arranged meetings between orc chiefs and human elders, serving as translator and mediator. It was difficult, frustrating work. Old hatreds died hard. But slowly, agreements formed. Trade began, hesitant at first, then more confident. Boundaries were established. Justice systems were discussed for handling conflicts that arose. Through it all, Harold and Grishka grew closer. She taught him the orc language, and he taught her more about human customs. They walked the mountain trails together, sharing stories and dreams. Sometimes they argued about cultural differences, about the best path forward for their peoples, but they always reconciled. Elena visited the mountain village several times, wanting to thank Grishka personally. The two women formed an unexpected friendship, bonding over shared interests in healing and plants. Elena even began studying medicine under Grishka's tutelage, making the journey up the mountain several times each month. A year passed. The peace held, fragile but real. There were incidents: a human shepherd whose sheep were stolen by young orcs, an orc hunter injured by human trappers, but both sides used the new systems to resolve conflicts without violence. On the anniversary of the day Harold had first climbed to the orc village, Grishka took him to the sacred peak. They climbed together this time, taking 2 days and camping overnight on the mountain. When they reached the ancestors' shrine, Grishka knelt before the altar. "I come seeking blessing," she said in the orc language, her voice carrying across the mountaintop. "I love a human. I wish to bind my life to his. Grant me a sign that this is not forbidden." They waited in silence. The wind howled around the peak. Snow began to fall, light at first, then heavier. Harold was about to suggest they seek shelter when he noticed something. The snow was falling everywhere, except within the circle of standing stones. The shrine itself remained clear, as if protected by an invisible barrier. Grishka noticed too. Her eyes widened and she looked at Harold with wonder. "The ancestors approve." "Are you certain?" "I am certain." She took his hands, pulling him to stand before her. "Harold Newland, by the old ways of my people, I claim you as mine. Will you have me?" Harold's throat tightened with emotion. "By every standard of my people and yours, yes. I will have you, Grishka, today and every day after." She pulled a cord from around her neck, a braided leather thong strung with carved bone beads. "This was my grandmother's. She gave it to me when she blessed our union." Grishka tied it around Harold's wrist. "Wear it and know you are mine." Harold had no family heirloom to offer in return, but he removed his mother's wedding ring from his pocket. He had carried it up the mountain hoping for this moment. "This was my mother's, the only thing I have of her. I give it to you freely." The ring was far too small for Grishka's fingers, but she smiled and strung it on her own cord, wearing it around her neck next to her heart. "Then we are bound." They kissed on the mountaintop, the snow falling around the shrine but not within it, and Harold felt more at peace than he had since his parents died. The journey down was filled with plans. They would need to decide where to live, his farm or her village, or perhaps somewhere new, neutral ground. They would face opposition, certainly, but also support. The world was changing slowly, and they were part of that change. When they reached the orc village, Grishka announced their binding publicly. The reactions were mixed. Groth looked disgusted, others uncomfortable, but Grishka's grandmother beamed with pride. Varka hugged them both, tears in her eyes. "You are brave," she told Harold. "Foolish, perhaps, but brave." They traveled to the valley next, and Harold made the same announcement to Alina and the neighbors. Old Martha clapped her hands with delight. Several others offered cautious congratulations. A few turned away, unwilling to accept it. But Alina hugged them both and declared she would throw them a celebration. The celebration was a strange, wonderful affair. Orcs and humans gathered at Harold's farm, sharing food and drink. There was tension. Certainly guards from both sides watched carefully, weapons close at hand. But there was also laughter, music, storytelling. Children from both races played together, and Harold thought that perhaps this was the future. Not perfect, not without conflict, but trying. As the sun set, Harold stood with Grishka on the edge of the crowd, watching the mingled gathering. "I failed your 3 tasks," he said quietly. Grishka leaned her head against his shoulder. "You failed the tasks but passed the only test that mattered." "What test was that?" "You showed me who you were when faced with the impossible. You worked until you broke. You chose mercy over violence. You climbed higher than you should have been able to climb." She turned to face him, her amber eyes warm. "And when you failed, you accepted it with grace and wept for someone you loved more than yourself. That is why I chose you, Harold, not despite your failures, but because of how you faced them." Harold kissed her forehead gently. "I am grateful every day that you did, as am I." She smiled, her tusks catching the evening light. "Though you are still terrible at climbing." "I made it to the top," Harold protested, eventually, with much wheezing and complaining. They laughed together, and the sound blended with the music and voices around them. The future remained uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, resistance from both sides, struggles to navigate 2 cultures. But they would face it together, bound by love and the knowledge that sometimes failing the test was exactly what opened the door to something better. Months turned to years. Harold and Grishka built a home halfway between the orc village and the human valley, a place where both peoples could visit. Grishka continued her work as a medicine keeper, now treating both orc and human patients. Harold farmed the land with Alina's help, growing crops that fed both communities. The peace held, growing stronger as trade increased and relationships formed. 2 more mixed couples bound themselves, emboldened by Harold and Grishka's example. Children were born, hybrid offspring with green-tinged skin and small tusks, accepted by both peoples if not always fully embraced. Alina eventually bound herself to a young orc man she met while studying medicine. The wedding was a joyous occasion that brought tears to Harold's eyes. his little sister, all grown up, starting her own family. Their parents would have been proud. On a spring morning 5 years after Harold first climbed to the orc village. Grishka woke him before dawn. "Come," she said. "I want to show you something." They walked to the well at the orc village, the one Harold had partially uncovered during his first task. The orcs had completed the work he started, clearing the collapsed stones and building a new stone surround. Clean water flowed freely now, serving the entire village. "You did this," Grishka said. "You showed us the water was still there, still reachable. We just needed someone small enough to find the way." They visited the caves where the cliff bear lived. The creature had passed on to whatever afterlife bears went to, but its offspring remained. Harold left an offering of honey at the cave entrance, thanking the old bear for its gift. Finally, they climbed to the sacred peak together, something they did once each year. The ancestors' shrine stood as it always had, weathered and eternal. Harold added a small carved figure he had made, two forms, one human and one orc, standing together. "What is that for?" Grishka asked. "A prayer. That others might find what we found, that love might build more bridges." Grishka added her own offering beside his, a pouch of healing herbs. That those who are different might heal each other rather than destroy. They stood together at the summit, looking out over the lands below. Orc villages and human settlements dotted the landscape, no longer enemies but neighbors, slowly learning to coexist. "You ever regret it?" Harold asked. "Choosing me?" Grishka thought for a moment, then shook her head. "Never. You gave me hope when I had forgotten what it felt like. You showed me that different does not mean enemy, that love is stronger than hate." She took his hand. "I chose you because you failed perfectly. You failed with honor, with courage, with heart. That is worth more than any success." Harold pulled her close, this orc woman who had saved his sister and stolen his heart. "Then I am grateful for every failure that brought me to you." They descended the mountain together as the sun rose, heading home to the life they had built between two worlds. The path was not always easy. There were still those who opposed their union, still conflicts between the peoples, still moments of doubt and fear. But there was also love, fierce and enduring. There was community, slowly learning to blend two cultures into something new. There was hope that the next generation would not know the same hatreds as the last. Harold Newland had climbed a mountain to complete 3 impossible tasks, had failed all 3, and had been chosen anyway. In that failure and that choosing, he had found not just a cure for his sister but a cure for his own loneliness, a bridge between worlds, and a love that would endure through whatever challenges came. And in the end, that was worth more than all the successful tasks in all the world.